Every piece of art that you create is born from your heart. But what happens when arrows of rejection, failure, and disappointment start hardening the walls around your heart? When your heart becomes a stone in the middle of a battlefield. I've learned that guarding your heart is not just biblical wisdom, it's also super important to your creativity and your creative experience. I decided to paint this heart, and it was inspired by a sermon that I was listening to, my pastor's sermon, and he was talking about the battlefield of the heart. And it was kind of like explaining how rejection, disappointment, you're thinking like, wow, I'm gonna get this job, and then you don't get the job. Even I'm gonna work on this painting, and then it doesn't come out the way that you expected it, or maybe it doesn't make the impact that you wanted. So disappointment, discouragement, rejection, whether it be from jobs or from mean trolls online or whatever the case may be, all of these things are almost like arrows piercing the heart. And as those arrows pierce the heart, if you think about like when you cut yourself, your skin, in trying to repair itself, it starts to scab up. And I know that sounds kind of gross, but if you picture a heart, as I'm illustrating it here, with all these arrows going through it, it starts to scab up. And then what you're doing is like you're trying to put up these walls, and you're hardening this heart around yourself to protect yourself from rejection, to protect yourself from the disappointment. But I feel like a lot of times what that ends up resulting in is that you just start to second guess, are you even doing what you're supposed to be doing? Am I even good enough to do this? And so you have to be mindful of those arrows. Rejection is going to come, disappointment is going to come. Those things are going to happen inevitably. But whether or not you choose to allow those things to harden your heart, to harden to steal, I would say, to rob you of your confidence, of your joy, of creating out of the pure joy of creating. Whether or not you choose to allow it to affect you in one way or the other, that is completely up to you. That is one thing that you could actually control. So then what's the solution? What do you do? How do you get past this? Well, one of the things is to do the opposite of what we usually tend to do, which is we isolate ourselves, or we stop creating altogether. And so what you want to do is you want to find a handful of like-minded individuals, people who share common interests, and you want to share your work with them, unfinished work. Get feedback, not just from a finished piece. And in fact, when you share a finished piece and ask for feedback, you're not really leaving a lot of room for actual feedback because the work is done already. But don't be afraid to share unfinished work, to share thumbnails, very, very loose ideas. Hey, I'm thinking about this. And when you're surrounded by people who share the same kind of passion, who share similar kinds of interest, they can feed into that. They can build you up. They can encourage you. They can provide feedback and help you look at something that maybe you're working on from a completely different perspective. Many times, they will see wonderful things in your ideas that you yourself aren't seeing. And solution number 2 is stop waiting for inspiration to strike, and instead create daily. Paint and draw daily, even when you don't feel like doing it. But if this is something, you have to really ask yourself, if this is something that you really want, then you will do it daily. You will do it consistently. You will do it even through the ugly drawings, through the ugly paintings, through the ugly process, which will ultimately lead to beautiful work. But you have to be willing to do this consistently, daily, or as consistent as you can within your schedule. You also have to separate creation from evaluation. You don't want to judge the creation process. You have to learn to accept, I think I heard it said once, the bad art as fertilizer for the good art. You have to be willing to get through those ugly phases before you can get to the good stuff. Every painting, even if you watch an artist painting, sharing their process online, a lot of times the beginning stages of that painting just don't look very exciting, just don't look very attractive. But you have to work through those steps in order to see something beautiful in the end. And I'm a firm believer that many times, yes, you do need training. You do need to take a course on painting or drawing, whatever the case may be. But I've also noticed that many times the biggest challenge that we face as creators is feeling discouraged. And when your heart has become hardened and you just feel uninspired, a lot of times it's that discouragement that produces less than what we're capable of doing. Because how you feel is going to show in every pencil mark that you make down on your paper, every brushstroke. And so I do believe that you should seek professional training if you need it. You have to be able to evaluate your work, and you have to be able to say, okay, I know that I'm falling a little short in these areas and I could use some training. But I think that aside from all of those things, none of those things will work if you aren't feeling encouraged, if you aren't feeling confident about what you're doing. And the last thing that I want to do is encourage you to seek the Lord. I believe that many times what we're experiencing physically is an indication of what's going on spiritually. There's a Bible scripture I wanted to share with you. It's from Ezekiel 36:26, and it says, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. So I want to encourage you today to pull those arrows out of your heart and do not allow your heart to become hardened. Make the work that only you can make. And I'm not trying to be cheesy or cliche, but really no one is able to make the work that you're able to make. No one thinks exactly the same way that you think. Nobody is inspired by the same colors that you're inspired by. Nobody sees the world around you in the exact same way that you see it. There's a lot of similarities. We can be inspired by similar things, but nobody is going to take all of that inspiration, whether it be from music, whether it be from a movie, something that you saw through your travels. No one is going to take all of those things and put them together exactly the way that you would. I don't believe that the battlefield ever really completely goes away. I don't believe that the battlefield of the heart is ever completely gone. But you can learn to guard it without the hardening of the heart. Let me know in the comments below. Share how rejection has maybe impacted your creativity in one way, and share one way that you have kept your heart from hardening, kept yourself confident. There might be other people watching this video that have maybe experienced something similar to you and could benefit from that. So I want to encourage you to guard your heart, keep creating, and I will see you on the next video. Keep the fire alive, my friends.